Welcome to eLearning Unlocked. Hi, I'm Mariel.
Hi, I'm Julia.
And welcome to another episode of eLearning Unlocked. Today we're going to talk about why employees don't engage with training. Quite an important topic.
Yes, definitely. So we have a few points to cover. First of all, we'll start with the reasons, and then we'll present a few interesting facts, and we can find some solutions later on.
Yeah, and this podcast is really targeted at people that are working in e-learning. You might be an instructional designer, you might work in an e-learning department, or your company might be planning some educational programs. So we really hope this is useful in terms of insights and will bring you some additional knowledge. So let's get started. So we're going to look at a few common reasons for low engagement. So to give a small summary, what are some of the key reasons? I mean, often training can feel like a boring chore or a time waster. So that's one topic we'll tackle. The other one is content isn't really relevant or maybe practical for daily work. And the third topic is, just if the LMS platform is a bit clunky or hard to navigate. So we'll kind of break those topics down. Maybe we start with the fact that training can feel like a chore. What are some of the things that we can think about with that?
Yeah, so in terms of, let's say, having to take a training as a requirement in a way, it's something that you feel a bit overwhelming when you join the company or when you're a long-time employee and then you need to take another training or on a product or maybe on some sales excellence kind of topics that you feel you are already, let's say, aware of and that you just need to check the boxes. That's it. You don't really find that much, let's say, positive outcome out of it. I think that's why you may feel that way.
I think it's a really good point. I think with adult learning, right, it's so important that we feel validated and that you have a certain autonomy as well, that we're not just assigned blindly the different topics and we cannot skip through what we already know. So I think definitely the more you engage the users and you say, okay, these are the different topics available to you. If you already did this last year, you can skip the topics you already did last year, or you can just quickly validate them with a quiz or something like that. But there are definitely ways also with the adult learning to really communicate very clearly the learning outcomes, right? So say like by the end of this course, you'll have this, that under your belts. You'll be able to sell this product. You'll be able to support a client with a specific request. These are kind of really key goals, I think, that then help the learner basically, right? Engage.
Yes, definitely.
So training can really feel like a chore, but if you give those clear objectives, and I think the other side, of course, is that we have a responsibility, right? To make the content efficient, well-designed, attractive, really immersive and kind of engaging for the learner. And then there's a huge responsibility at the company for that as well.
Yes, exactly. Because just to not add another, let's say, to-do task on the to-do list, rather really inspire what the outcome may bring to them.
Definitely.
It's super important to highlight that. Because if you don't have clear outcomes, if you just have another, let's say, activity to cover during your working day, then it's just another boring homework in a way.
It doesn't feel like a
deal with.
For sure.
Yeah.
And also the fact of, knowing how long it should be. That's a golden question we get all the time. How long should my content be? And the true answer is often as short as possible, right? As long as it needs to be. So of course you need to be able to repeat topics, you need to be able to reinforce topics, but at the same time, don't make your employees necessarily go to like a 45-minute training. I mean, we're really about short snippets, maybe have it be more repetitive over several days or several weeks. But if you can keep it really short, snappy, I think this, depending also, of course, on the work environment, but if someone's in a retail environment on the shop floor, I think, a few minutes a day would be amazing compared to a 1-hour course.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you just mentioned, just to highlight the fact that it's one of the chores, not in a bad way, let's say, but that it's incorporated in their daily work, because otherwise, you have another task over your, let's say, daily responsibilities, and then you don't feel that it's, let's say, complementary in a way, right? So it's just really to make sure that it's it's an essential part of their job, and that the outcomes will be, let's say, reflected later on in their daily work. I think it's an immediate solution to that first reason.
Yes. So I think we kind of covered the basics. We can definitely go into more detail on those different topics in another podcast, but we really covered the key basics of, why does training feel boring? Moving on to the next one, why training can be like not practical or relevant for daily work. I think this is really where going back to the learning objectives and really seeing as well how they align with the realistic day-to-day of the employee is so important, right? Because we recently worked in a history course for clients, and it was a very interesting exercise because of course the client has a huge, rich history, but not all of the history is going to apply to the retail shop floor assistant. So for them, what's going to be important is not knowing all the dates of every event that happened in the history of the company. They need anecdotes. They need to be able to go to a client and say, did you know that this and that person in history already wore this watch? Or did you know that this is where the watch was originally created? Or did you know that our brand was the first to create this watch? So this is really something where we need to think about the day-to-day life and the day-to-day sort of shop floor experience and really understand which dates are relevant and which are just dry content, right? I think this
exactly. Yeah, I think it's an excellent summary of this one, because we need to make sure that the theory is not more important than the practice in a way.
Yes. No, and I totally agree with that. I think you're right. We need to kind of sort of dig through all the information and not think about everything we want to push on the employee, but really what is realistic in a 5, 10 or 15 minute time span for them to absorb this information and reuse.
Yeah, exactly. To really break down the essentials in a way, and anecdotes, as you mentioned, because it's also a bit easier to remember that later on, right? When you want to talk to the client later on a shop floor, then you really want to highlight certain interesting facts from the history rather than that watch was invented in this and this year, right? It's not the interesting. It's interesting. Why was it invented? Like whether the company that we work in was the first one introducing this kind of concept, etc., to really build the engagement, and it will definitely reflect in a daily work, I would say. So
no, absolutely.
We would then kind of have another quick fix for this second reason. And I think another approach that you could take, aside from the one that you just mentioned, is to think of a bit of phased approach, right? So first of all, you really introduce the essentials. You focus on like the most important and most, in a way, even generic facts to remember. Yeah. And then you move on with more details. I don't know, maybe if an employee is already a few years with the company, and they would need to have a bit more, let's say, knowledge, more snippets here and there on the history.
With levels, right? Like level 1, level 2.
Exactly. So not to overwhelm with like all the data, but then just taking a phased approach.
No, I love that comment as well, because I think sometimes we want to put everything in lesson 1 and it's just not realistic, right? So rather than trying to force everything into a first lesson or even a first course, you have next year as well. So maybe that's another topic that you would love to focus on next year. It's really about sort of choosing what the learner needs to learn in this moment.
Yeah, definitely a good one to remember.
So then the third common reason is that LMS platforms can be very clunky or kind of outdated or hard to work with. So what are some of the things that people run into there?
Oh, that's a very broad topic. We could talk about it for hours, I think. But this is a common misconception, I would even say, that if you think of a learning platform, you imagine straight, let's say, text-based, course that you need to take with like 5 questions at the end, like no images, no design. You just have to tick it off. And again, regarding the navigation as well, I think it's very important, because sometimes you get onto the platform and it's kind of, let's say, okay on the desktop, for example, but you're like on the run, you want to take a course when you're, just commuting to your job, or when you have a little break or something. And then you're struggling with navigating the course, with like trying to figure out how to put a sound on, whether there's any kind of animation. So definitely it's a valid reason, I would say, why employees are not that eager to take those courses. But I think there's quite a few let's say, fixes that we introduced here?
I think you're totally right. I think it needs to be mobile friendly. Like, you can't just not have a non-mobile friendly platform, but also, like you said, this sort of old school, if you feel like you're going back to 1995, and it's like all text-based and hyperlinks, there's just a certain loss of confidence from the user in the platform. They may not even be consciously aware of it, but I think branding does a lot more than just making things look pretty. You instill sort of confidence of, this is a solid application, this is up to date, this is well maintained. And I think when it has that old look and feel, we just immediately feel it's kind of clunky.
Yes, definitely. And it really doesn't matter if you're, I don't know, millennial, Gen Z, boomer, whatever generation you're in. If you don't feel the platform that you course is on, then it won't work for you. And I think even if some people prefer to have a more, let's say, clean and less, let's say, disturbing layout, then I think anyway, you can make the platform clean, but full of multimedia, full of like little design, tweaks here and there, just to really make it more interesting and engaging. Because in the end, this is what keeps me on the platform, right? Like, to really have a clear navigation, a clear overview on the courses, and a really nice visual touch.
Yeah, it's like this ease of use and this confidence that you have in the platform. And I think the bar has been raised over the past few years. I mean, even the train, even your bank, they all have amazing applications now. So it's kind of the new standard that you just expect it to be very clean, very modern. And yeah, it's just a new standard, I would say. But I think in summary, it's quite clear. I mean, it's kind of what we often come back to, but we just have to think of, this is like a human experience. These are real people. So what does their day-to-day look like? How is your course going to influence that day-to-day? How is it going to be perceived? How can they engage with it? And are they going to really have an added value? And I think as soon as you deliver added value, where people enjoy their work more, feel more confident, feel more product knowledge, all of these things are very positive attributes, what can actually make you enjoy your work more, right? It can actually make you feel like, I want to come to work in the morning. So these are all things I think that really then also boost the engagement and the return to the platform as well. So yeah, a lot of practical tips. I don't know if you want to say anything else in conclusion.
Yeah, I think what's important to highlight here is that we actually covered maybe a bit of a summary on why such situations happen, and we already provided you with a few, let's say, quick fixes, quick practical tips that you can incorporate almost immediately. But I also would highlight that we encourage you to really get deeper and try to break down those reasons into maybe let's say, bigger topics of for let's say, figuring out the reasons for your specific use case, because those are, let's say, generic reasons, and it's really always worth getting deeper into your target audience,
your scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And to really understand whether the learning outcomes are not clear, whether, if this is a case that the platform or the tool that you're using is actually not that, let's say, user friendly, then try to figure out how to, maybe navigate through it a bit better. So really, we encourage you to try to locate the issue in a way and try to get deeper into it, and not, let's say, always assume the generic reasons in a way.
I feel like that's a very good point. So really, if the training isn't useful, easy, or engaging, people tune out, and it's your job to, like Julia said, analyze situation a bit like a detective and understand what's happening, where's the disconnect, and how can you improve it. We really hope this was useful. We'll be recording different podcasts on different topics, so do come back if it helps you in your day-to-day. And we wish you a lovely day. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks a lot for listening.